welcome to the CDAO Magazine interview series. I am Sue Pittacora with Wavicle Data Solutions, and I'm delighted to be joined here today by Himanshu Arora, Chief Data and Analytics Officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. Welcome, Himanshu.
Thank you. So good to be here. Good to see you.
Thank you. So, Himanshu, we know organizations everywhere are eager to use AI and advanced analytics and the new tools. But they're really grappling with how do they get their data ready? What is the right strategy for this? So maybe let's jump right in by starting with, can you just tell us some of the innovative use cases you've seen for AI over the past year?
So that's a very good question. Even before we jump into the specific use cases, I think one framing I like to use is this idea that I borrowed from Gartner, which is around everyday AI versus game-changing AI, sort of being one axis, and internal facing, as in those capabilities that are more internally available to our associates and employees, versus external facing capabilities that are targeted towards our customers, consumers, anybody who engages from the outside and with the company. So when you start to look at things at that scale, I think there is a lot of excitement about the game-changing AI capabilities, and particularly in healthcare. When we look at healthcare, is a not that other sectors are not, but it's, in my opinion, it has a couple of additional layers of complexity in terms of the players involved. So there's health insurers like us, there's care providers, there's pharmaceuticals, there's labs, there's durable equipment manufacturers. So multiple subsectors within have to work together. And to bring anything game-changing to life, it means that at least more than one component of the sector has to adapt to that. And the moment we start to look at healthcare, and particularly the health aspect of it, something that comes into pronounced relief is PHI, right? So we all value our health information, our data, privacy and security that goes with it. And now when we fundamentally look at AI more broadly, but particularly generative AI, which has been all the rage over the last year plus, PHI can both be a blessing, but also something that has to be dealt with differently. A blessing in that there is so much knowledge embedded and untapped knowledge embedded within that data, within health data, that it can really be game-changing, but challenging because security, privacy aspects of it have to be kept in mind first and foremost. And there's a lot of regulatory development on this front, which is welcomed. There is a lot of consumer excitement, but also consumer concern on this front, which is also understandable. So, there's that 2x2 framework, the additional complexity. So when I think about, where does AI begin to show up for a single state, not-for-profit, mission-driven health insurer like us, our thinking is that these capabilities first start to show up in an internal facing way. And then over time, as we develop confidence with them, and the broader ecosystem that we engage with demonstrates readiness, we start to make these abilities and capabilities much more available in engaging directly with our customers. Right now, there are things which are at the cusp of this, and there are use cases that are at the cusp that I'll talk about. But purely internal facing, right? There are things like how we manage security and privacy of our data. There's AI capabilities that can be applied there, even generative to a certain extent. Anywhere where there is knowledge encapsulation internally, right? So as you can imagine, a lot of our associates spend a lot of time, energy in answering questions that are based off of a knowledge compendium, whether it's a benefit detail, whether it's a plan detail, whether it is a combination of those aspects versus what customer service, for example, a member has experienced and has contacted us, issues they have contacted us about before. So I think that's one area where we start to say, okay, can we figure out ways, and that's what we're actively pursuing as well, is can we figure out ways to bring ourselves into the generative AI world while still being clear or remaining clear of PHI as being the major contributing portion of it. Then we look at some other capabilities which are about, okay, we have a lot of internal processes which are again highly dependent on knowledge encapsulation, but then reworking similar paths around knowledge. So our legal processes, procurement processes, again, these are processes that will benefit, that have the potential to benefit from things like generative AI. The thing that we're trying to solve for there right now is, how do we engage with these large language models in a cost efficient way so that we can actually use them to drive ROIs, which can then reflect in affordability, for example, for our members. But at the same time, do so in a way where the data that we are utilizing isn't fully exposed to the LLMs in the first place. And we've all seen, again, this is very early days, so it's not fully unanticipated or unexpected, but we've all seen incidents of companies or employees using these capabilities in a way which ended up inadvertently exposing the data that wasn't meant to be exposed in some way, shape, or form. Right. So that's still it's still a space where there is more caution, as rightly as there should be. But the excitement of how can we push on this and how soon can we push on this remains very apparent. As we start to figure those things out, right, which is what are engagement models with LLMs, for example, are we and others like us taking instances of LLMs that exist out there, instantiating them on infrastructure, running them on our GPUs, and therefore able to engage with an LLM fully without concern of data flowing out? The compromise you make there is, well, the parent LLM is advancing at a speed that you then are sort of stepped back from, right? There's a separation that happens there. Or are there methods like vectorization, context setting that can be applied instead of raw data when engaging with a foundational LLM, whether it's a Lambda or a OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Gemini, or any of those? So still protect the data, but get the benefit from the large language models in the generative AI front. Now, there's like I said, generative AI is all the rage, but there's all previous aspects, right, which seem a little bit legacy now, but they're not that old in terms of how long they've been around. But machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, and use cases that sit on that side of the house. But again, the difference is instantiation of those capabilities is comparatively easier done behind a firewall, and therefore protecting PHI, PII, and related data becomes easier. And that's really the difference that we are experiencing, at least right now, between generative and everything non-generative. So long answer to a question, but hopefully it helps.
Right. So I love your thinking about starting internally versus externally, kind of getting your arms around, what are the right use cases and how do you protect with PHI and these other things that really you have to focus on data security and data privacy, even more so in the healthcare industry than in other industries. So as you think about all that and you're looking at these internal cases and thinking about what the knowledge base might be and so forth, do you have specific ideas in mind for the healthcare industry and how you might advance, where you might start specifically with some use cases?
Yeah, another good question. So I think there's internally, right, when we look at how our associates are building up their own knowledge bases and how much training they are requiring upfront, like for example, especially for forward-facing or member-facing functions like call centers, there's definitely a use case or two there, right? Which is what must you train a new employee on from the ground up, versus where can we stand up, and this is not Microsoft Copilot, but the concept of Copilot related tools, right? Where they have an active assistant that's available to them. So even as they're on the phone with someone trying to answer a question, or even on a representative assisted chat, they have a knowledge compendium that they can rely on, right? Right now, that person in the middle, if you will, is a fail-safe or point for making sure that any inadvertent, for example, hallucinations or other concerns that happen with these LLMs, they don't directly pass forward, right? So That's one area. I think a couple of areas where we are trying to play around with is one I mentioned around this idea of benefits, right? So how do we, benefits in healthcare can be pretty involved and complex to understand. There are baseline benefits that we have as part of our baseline plans, but many employers, in the interest of providing more exceptional, more differentiated healthcare services to their employees, then also have variations on top of them, right? So if you're a customer service representative and you're getting a question from an employee about whether this benefit is covered or not, or what are the boundaries around which that they should understand, it can be a pretty long conversation, or it can be a conversation which can involve periods of short conversations, long hold times, more short conversations, long hold times, right? So the experience part of it, and but also the background metrics, backend metrics part of it from our perspective can be very challenging. So that's one area for us to say, okay, can we overlay our benefits design packages and internal benefits design? Again, these are not about, there's no member PHI in here yet. These are generic, or even in cases specialized benefit designs, but they do not have a member's PHI, PII in there, right? That is handled separately outside. So the representative should be able to leverage this and ask questions and get answers in a way that can then further help them assess the member in a very clean, um, very coherent way. Right? So that's one. Another is um, when, so again, taking a step back, healthcare as an ecosystem is increasingly dependent on mutual entities relying on each other, vendors, right? The common terminology that's used, business partners, and data exchange between business partners to push a business process forward is an increasingly more treaded path in terms of how companies engage with each other. Obviously, anytime you bring data into the picture and services on top of it, legal procurement processes tend to become pretty complicated and involved. Not very different for us. So one of the areas we're looking at is saying, okay, how can we speed up the procurement processes, entity engagement processes, legal reviews? Again, a lot of information where there is either repetition or look back to a knowledge compendium naturally that might happen, right? So again, there's no PHI, there's no PII in any of this, but there is business confidential information, there's business proprietary information still that has to be protected, but we have more degrees of freedom to figure out how to engage with these large language models to do that. So those are a couple of examples which seem pretty conservative, but the idea is we need to get sea legs under us and learn from a couple of use cases, because we've all seen on the other side uh, there's been a number of missteps when chatbots have taken life of their own, if you will.
Yes, and I've heard more and more people or companies are resistant to chatbots right now because of what has happened in the past, and customers then
Right.
resistant. So now we have to retrain our customers that chatbots are a little bit more intelligent now, if you will, than they were a few years ago. So I love some of what you said. So you talked about training and helping basically improve the process for training employees, as well as then maybe improving the procurement process and working with vendors and so forth, and maybe smoothing out the legal process, if you will, and those sorts of things. So a lot of that relates to business process efficiency. So this
Yep.
really leads into my next question, but how are you planning to measure the effectiveness or the ROI on your initiatives as you move forward, Himanshu?
Yeah, so very good question. Uh, some of it is a pull forward from how we have measured the impact and effectiveness of innovative capabilities like advanced analytics, data science, machine learning, etc. Some of it is still under development, as in that is unique to when we talk AI, but particularly generative AI. And if we really step back 2 or 3 steps, the reason for there being a two-level problem to solve for there is when we go back and look at previous revolutions, whether it's around the advent of internet, the move to desktops, the move to mobile, uh, even Web 2.0, right? What we think of Web 2.0, they have primarily been about creating, not only, but primarily been about creating efficient frontiers from a tasking work breakdown structure perspective, right? Therefore, the attribution from an efficiency perspective can be much more at the task level. And then the ROI that a task produces, whether it's fraud prevention, whether it is better clinical care and health outcomes, whether it is higher revenues or sales, you measure, that two-parter, right? Like what is the work breakdown structure efficiency and what is the business outcome that I'm driving on top of it? When we are thinking now about generative, what we are doing differently here, and it is still, again, a developing frontier, is that efficiency moves now to knowledge efficiency, right? So it's really the first time where we are primarily focused on encapsulating, streamlining the knowledge component of it. And now, how do you value knowledge? How do you value encapsulating knowledge in a way that goes beyond just efficiency, but does contribute to business outcomes, right? So the traditional measurement framework that we are using, we are pulling it forward, which is hardwired into business goals and outcomes in compliance in line with the business plan. When we look at from a adoption and usability perspective, how far, how wide, how deep are these solutions being adopted within the company? That's another set of measures. And the third is internal measures around how we are improving the capability step by step over any period of time, right? So if me and my team can get a unit of work done with 10 units today, it needs to go to 8 to 6 to 4 to continually become efficient internally over time as well. But that knowledge encapsulation piece, how we value that, that's still TBD. It's going to take some playing around with that. But if our audience and viewers have ideas around that, I'm all ears. I'm looking to learn.
Right. Well, Himanshu, thank you so much. You shared so many insights today, from thinking about game-changing AI innovations, looking at an internal framework, debiasing data, using AI for recovery and data breaches potentially. Really a lot of rich insights. Thank you so much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it. And to all, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.
Thank you.